Hello, I'm Liam Dann, New Zealand Herald Business Editor at Large, and welcome to Money Talks. This is a podcast about money, but we're not going to tell you how to get rich, and we're not going to try and pick the next interest rate move. In this series, I talk to interesting New Zealanders about how money has shaped their lives and what they've learned about it over the years. For today's podcast, I'm joined by Olivia Blaylock, the Chief Executive of business coaching firm The Icehouse. Kia ora, Olivia.
Hi.
Welcome to Money Talks.
Thank you for having me.
Now, I want to get you to explain The Icehouse. Can you tell me what you do as if you're explaining to a child?
Okay. All right, I'll give it a crack. So we are an organisation that exists to help grow the New Zealand economy through helping the owners and leaders of small to medium-sized businesses get better at running those businesses.
Sure. And are you still very much in the thick of the startup world and venture capital, or has that sort of changed?
Yeah, so there's two separate organisations now.
Yep.
So I'm the Chief Executive of Icehouse,
Yep.
and we work in the leadership capability and coaching and advisory space, and Icehouse Ventures, Robbie Paul is the CEO of that, and that's the VC.
Sure.
part.
But it's still a very dynamic end of the economy, right? It's the bit where we kind of want that engine room of small business to come up and grow.
Absolutely. I mean, 97% of businesses in New Zealand are small, so
Yeah.
it's super important.
Yep. And how would you describe the things in the industry at the moment? I mean, look, we know it's a tough economy and has been a very tough economy. A lot of small business people have really been through the ringer with COVID. What's your feeling?
Yeah, it has been tough. And, I think any business that's kind of still going is a good business because there's plenty that aren't. But I also think that our business owners that we work with are cautiously optimistic. I think you have to be in business, and they're ready for some movement. And so people are feeling it's hard out there, but how can we kind of, I guess, get ready, bandy together? That's part of our role, is to facilitate collaboration and partnerships. And so I think people are ready to get going. Yeah,
I mean, does the economy, the ups and downs, does it affect your business in the sense that, does investing in that kind of, training and growth strategy and that sort of thing, does that become a luxury for businesses? Are they nervous about spending, or do they need to spend in that area?
Yeah, absolutely. We're impacted by the slowdown as much as the people that we work with. And you're right, investment in training or learning and development is often something that people give up first. But what we're seeing is, and we have seen some slowdown, we've also seen an increase in people investing in their leaders, so, wanting to retain their team. We've also seen a larger uptake of things like sales skills, because, people understanding they need to be able to articulate their value and deal with price objections and stuff. And also financial skills training has become more popular as people really need to understand their money better.
Sure. Well, speaking of understanding money, we might come back to some of that economic stuff, but on your relationship with money and things, what sort of money personality would you say that you are? Are you a spender, saver, investor?
Yeah, I'm glad you're asking me this and not my husband, but I'm definitely a spender.
Right.
Yeah.
Does that mean you enjoy money?
I do enjoy money.
Yeah.
And it's funny. I remember, the whole thing about money doesn't buy you happiness, and it absolutely doesn't. But not having it can also make you pretty unhappy too.
Sure,
So,
absolutely.
yeah.
I mean, what are your first memories about, having money, or being aware of money, the importance of money, when as a child?
Yeah, I remember the days of returning empty glass bottles for money. I can't remember, wouldn't have been much, 10 cents or 20 cents or so. And that was the first time really that I had my own money, and I would take it all and go to the shop and spend it on a 20-cent mixture.
Yep.
And if you were really rich, you'd be able to buy a 50-cent one. I don't even think you buy one lolly for 50 cents now.
Whereabouts were you growing up?
I grew up in Nelson.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
And was money tight? I mean, what did your parents do?
Yeah, so we were just a working class middle New Zealand family. But my parents had my brother and myself really young, and not surprisingly, they got divorced when I was only 5.
Right, yeah.
What was surprising back in that day was that my dad raised us. And so, I remember, he had a mortgage, 3 children. He had to work. We still saw my mum every weekend and stuff.
Yeah.
She worked really hard too. But to help him pay the mortgage, he brought in some friends to board, I guess, which he was a cyclist. These were guys from the cycling club, and it probably would be frowned upon now, but actually it was wonderful because we just had this extended family. I learnt how to play 500 when I was really young, so I won some money that way.
Almost like being in a big flat.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I later on went and moved to live with my mum, and we moved away. So I've grown up with young, hardworking parents that worked to provide for us. I remember my mum. She worked night shift. She went on to have more children, and she worked night shift, and then she'd come home, get us off to school, and then go back to work for another 5 or 6 hours. And I think back about that now, and I think, I used to always just think she was grumpy, but she was probably just really tired. Really tired
so
providing.
Had an extended family living with your dad, and then the family extended when you're living with your mum again, with more brothers and sisters.
That's right. Yeah.
Well, I guess in that, you must have been aware. I mean, 5's probably so young that you don't remember much before that, but you must have been conscious that money was, something you had to be careful with growing up.
Yeah.
Did you get pocket money, or did you have to get part-time work?
Yeah, no, I've worked for as long as I can remember. I remember having a paper run. I remember babysitting. When I was at high school, I used to work in a rest home and help do the dishes and things like that. So definitely always worked, at university, multiple jobs.
Yeah. And did a sense of wanting to maybe have some more money and financial security, did that influence the kind of choices you made at school, the kind of subjects you did?
No, not really. In fact, when I first left school, I started training to become a nurse, which my kids find really hilarious because all the medicine I ever give them is a cup of hard and ups pills. But and then I actually ended up leaving school, leaving the nursing college because when I'd been at school, I was involved with Students Against Driving Drunk.
Right.
And I got shoulder tapped to become the national coordinator for that, which was a paid role. But I essentially gave up tertiary education to do that.
That's interesting. So, I mean, in some ways, that's a sort of extracurricular thing that some kids get involved in.
Yeah.
But you obviously saw a way, you were treating it like a job.
Well, it was a job, but I guess it's that kind of sense of purpose that I've always had. And if you can combine a job with that, that for me, that's really satisfying. And that links right back to what I do now. But so I did that for a few years, and then in 1993 it was this women's suffrage centennial year, and I was awarded a medal for my services to community, and I won a scholarship which sent me to university, and then I ended up doing a commerce degree, which was quite a shift from nursing to commerce.
But you'd sort of made your way, in an organisation like that, running an organisation. I guess that would have shifted. I guess if you'd you might not have seen the value of a commerce degree straight out of school. Yeah,
true, very true. Yeah, I would never have picked that I would have done that. And then I actually joined Main Freight back in the very early days as the first formal female grad that they had. And Main Freight was a very different business then.
Quite a blokey place.
Well, very, very blokey, but also...
they're more than just truck driving and things. They know that they're logistics and everything. Yeah. Don Braid will tell me that if I say that. But it must have been quite a blokey place back then.
Absolutely was, but it was so much fun. And back then it was just a truck place, and it wasn't all around the world like it is now. But so I learnt business there, but I also learnt about the power of teamwork. And, there's just lessons from Main Freight that I still use every day.
Maybe just run us through the CV to hear quickly, because there's a lot of different jobs, and probably the steps that you took to end up getting to a CEO level. Was it sort of a progressive thing, or just?
Yeah, so I had a career. I started in sales at Main Freight and moved into marketing for a while, and worked at places like telecom back in the day, which was a corporate, and realised that corporate life wasn't for me, and I needed to be more involved in a smaller organisation where I had more ability to influence outcome, I think. I was at the Child Cancer Foundation in a general manager of marketing and fundraiser role. And then actually in 2009, married to a facilitator, and I was a contract marketer, and those are the two things when the GFC hit that people stopped spending money on.
Right,
and our household income 1 month just absolutely got wiped out.
Wow.
So we were
Mortgage?
Mortgage, family, and thought we've got to take control of this. And I'd just won Marketer of the Year. He was really high demand, and we thought we'd start our own training business. And then we thought, well, actually, who are we? Let's buy David Foreman, which was a business that he was contracting at. I had done the David Foreman training as a grad at Main Freight. It was established in 1970, believed in the brand, and long story short, we bought it. Our accountant told us we had rocks in our head. It took a bit longer to turn around than we thought it would. It was losing money when we bought it, which was obviously reflected in what we paid for it. But so did that for 12 years together, and during that period I did the Icehouse Owner-Manager program.
Sure, that's a connection.
Well, that's a connection, and then we were approached about selling our business in COVID, and and we'd gone from a business that was doing well, but it was all face-to-face training. COVID hit, and again, the whole year's worth of bookings were wiped out in a second. Stuart had been unwell, and we made the decision to exit. I did a few projects. I stayed with the new owner for a little period of time, and then I joined the Icehouse on the 1st of August 2023 in a new role as Chief Growth Officer, leading the sales, marketing and partnership teams. And then on the 1st of July last year, I moved into the CE seat.
Sure. So how was the experience, running a business with your partner?
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend.
I guess, boardroom battles are, who wins those?
Yeah, well, look, it's interesting. I mean, some people and many of the businesses that we work with at the Icehouse do it really successfully. I think where we went wrong is that we never really clearly defined our roles, and we had similar backgrounds in sales and marketing. We worked well together, but we were reflecting the other day that the best year we had was the year that Stuart had cancer and wasn't in business.
Because he was
he was out, and he was I guess it was a bit clearer sort of role definition, and
because you're a parent, you've got a couple of kids, so does that mean you're juggling motherhood through all this?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So, I mean, how did you find that with a business?
Yeah, I mean, it was a juggle. I've never been able to get that work-life balance thing ever perfect. And I think it's sort of got to be dynamic. I think there are times when work does need to become a priority, and other times when home is a priority. And
sure. How old are the kids? Are they almost?
One's 25 and has grown up around business owner parents, and he's on his way. He's running a couple of businesses himself, and then the younger one is 15, and he's pretty independent too. Yeah,
so quite a gap.
Yes.
Was that because you're running a business in between?
Well, maybe. I mean, it took a bit of convincing to have a second one, and then it took a few false attempts, and then when we finally did have Cooper, we tried again and lost another one. And just going through, while I do actually wish that we'd kept going, so Cooper had a sibling closer in age, but the pressure of going through that and running a business is not something I wanted to do again.
Yeah. Fair enough. But obviously your eldest son, quite an entrepreneurial attitude. He would have grown up in an entrepreneurial sort of family, but your background wasn't necessarily that. So where did the sort of the spark? Because I sometimes wonder about it's a sort of a hard thing to teach, although you guys are involved in that. But
well, it's interesting because my dad, when we were young, was a draftsman and worked for the power board, and then it took redundancy at one point and started a business and became really successful, turning over $50 million or something. And so I think although I didn't live with him during a lot of that period, though,
you watched him take that risk and do those things.
Yeah, and, I guess the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. And, my kids have grown up with business conversations and an interest in it and an understanding that, you can take risk and sometimes you get it wrong, but they've had the luxuries of when those risks have worked as well. And,
I mean, it strikes me that the world is, the way the world of work is now, that kids are going to have some entrepreneurial, get up and go to even if they're just working for themselves or as contractors. I mean, do you think it's something that can be taught?
I think it can be, and I think things like Young Enterprise and other initiatives in school are wonderful for that. But I think one of the great things about kids is they've just got so many more choices, and I see that with Riley. Like he took a traditional path upon leaving school and started university, and then rang me one day and he's like, I just would rather be out doing it. And it took me a bit of convincing, and I was like, but mate, just get through until. And he's like, no, Mum, that's your dream, not mine. And he's away flying, and I'm really, really proud of him.
Yeah, I mean, how does it work at the Icehouse if a business comes and sees you and says, we need help or we want to achieve this? I mean, what's the sort of the structure that they would sort of get from Icehouse?
Yeah, so it depends on the size of their business, what we can offer them. But, we always start by listening to them, having a conversation, learning more about the business, what in particular are they looking for. If it's something that they need an intervention in, on a one-to-one thing, we have coaches that can help them with that. If they need a bit more of a general kind of overall business awareness or education. I mean, a lot of business owners, particularly small to medium-sized business owners, are almost the accidental business owner, where they've been good at their trade, if you like, and I say trade loosely, and they've grown, and suddenly they've got all these people working for them, and they have never had training in business stuff. So that's where we come in. We can help them develop growth strategies. We can help them work on HR, people and culture type stuff. A wide range.
You've written a few. You have a blog and a few opinion pieces about arguing for bolder leadership in the country. I mean, what do you think the country's missing in terms of that kind of that kind of leadership? I
don't think businesses are sitting around waiting for the government to give them handouts, but I think sometimes we've been waiting for a bit more of a plan of where we're going, and we've now got that. We're going for growth, right? So, we really buy into that, and I think that Icehouse, that's exciting for us. Growth for us doesn't just mean top line. Businesses, owners and leaders that work with us, we help them grow their confidence and their clarity and connections. But in terms of the government now have this growth plan, and what I'm keen to see now is a bit more detail around some projects that might be getting rolled out. They've made some things easier around the procurement area, and so that's where the Icehouse, the value of our network comes in, because we can pull businesses together, which might mean that they can collaborate and put a bid together and be a bit more competitive than previously.
Sure, yeah. Just picking back up on something you said earlier, you said your husband had cancer?
Yeah.
So was that a shock diagnosis? I guess they always are.
Yeah, absolutely. And, funny, because he had been moaning about having a sore throat and a cough, and I was just thinking he was being a bit, it was man flu, and I ignored him for a while, and then finally got sick of him moaning and said, can you please go to the doctor? And he did. And the first time around, the doctor didn't look in his throat. And then a month later, he was still coughing and annoying me. So I sent him back, and he saw my doctor, and she asked him to open his mouth, and he did. And she went, and her hands went up, and she said, how long have you had that lump in your throat for? Long story, he had a tennis ball sized tumour in his throat, which ended up having to, within 2 weeks, I think he was in there, and he had an 18-hour operation to have it removed. Wow. He had he lost all his palate. He had to have his palate rebuilt from his arm, and then his arm rebuilt from his leg and stuff, and series of radiotherapy. And So it was also this whirlwind, right, that happened in a couple of weeks, and we're running a business and we've got children, and it was pretty tough. We had a wonderful team, which meant that the business kept going for a while. We were lucky enough to have insurance, which took some pressure of the finances around, but it certainly makes you think about things and value what's important. And for Stuart, who was a facilitator delivering sales and leadership training, he was unable to communicate. So, that was quite a big shock. 6 months later, they found another one in the other side of his throat. So we went through a similar process for that. And it's funny, even just in that period of time, you think you've made changes and you think that but actually you can easily slip back to the treadmill and lose perspective. So we had another chance at that with a second one around, and then a few years later there was a third one and stuff. For a while we did stop and make some changes, and then you kind of forget, and you need to be reminded that actually, things that you thought once were important aren't.
I guess that comes very clear very quickly. But you kind of, I guess you also have to keep going with work and business in the sense, partly it's money, but partly because you've got to do something. You've got to keep going, right?
Yeah, that's right. And when you're running a business and you've got people relying on you, and it's not just the individual, but you're feeding their families and stuff. I mean, you do have to keep going, and I think that's something that people don't often understand about business owners, that when they're earning their money, but they're also paying themselves. Like, that's quite different to just getting your money in your bank each month, and knowing that you're responsible often for enabling all sorts of families and number of people around. There's a huge responsibility.
Yeah. I mean, how's the shift been back to a salary? I mean, is it a relief?
In some ways it's really nice to know that.
I guess, not to say that there is still responsibilities and targets and all the rest
absolutely,
of it.
Absolutely. But it is quite a different feeling. But having walked in the shoes, I have a huge amount of respect and empathy for business owners, particularly when it has been so tough.
Let's get into some quick fire questions.
Sure.
What's the poorest you've ever been, would you say?
I was thinking about that, and it's all relative, isn't it? I mean, as I said, when we were kids, we didn't have a lot, but we got by, and there were always people worse than us. But, I think even just recently, we bought a house and knocked it down, and we were planning on starting it before Stuart got sick and rebuilding, and then honestly, we could have been on Grand Designs. It was such a drama. But then we did start, and then COVID hit, and then that got put on hold for a while, and then we started, and supply chain challenges, and basically, long story short, the cost and time just blew out, and we finally moved in. And I remember coming home one day and saying to Stuart, is it really worth this financial pressure, this house? And anyway, we ended up selling it, and it was emotional because it had been a sort of a journey from before he got sick and stuff. But interestingly, now with none of that financial pressure and our house is not as nice, we're a lot happier. The one thing I miss, which is so privileged, I know, but it's the sparkling water tap. And, and as Stuart says to me, you can have a lot of bottles of sparkling water for the cost of that tap. But it was a really good lesson for me, actually, to how easy it is to get caught up in all the fancy stuff, and really it makes no difference.
On the flip side, when things have been going well, you've outed yourself as a bit of a spender. What would you say the most indulgent purchases that you've made? Oh, look, well, maybe that sparkling water tap. I mean, I like clothes. I like New Zealand fashion. There's a few things in my wardrobe that I've paid a lot of money for and only worn once, and some I haven't even worn, which is silly. I've got better at that as I've got older. It's interesting with the swimming pool in the house that we built. At the end of the day, I think every swim we had would, if you worked it out, was $500 or $600 or $700 a swim. Right. Yeah.
A very expensive water feature.
Do you buy lotto tickets? Do you still imagine winning lotto?
Oh, very rarely, maybe when it gets over 20 million or something and have a little bit of a dream. But, I always say to my family, there's only so much money you need, and I would rather that it went to, 20 families, each one $1 million than one family, 120.
Yeah, sure. What would you say the best piece of financial advice that you've ever received is?
I never received it, but I wish that I had had that advice that some people get, which is to never have a credit card.
Right, yeah. And that's because you're a spender. From it.
Yeah. And, I still have a credit card now, but the difference is I always pay it off in full. But, when I was younger.
When you're younger, that first time, the interest is just horrendous,
absolutely,
isn't it? Yeah, no, fair enough. And I guess, that's kind of answers the next question maybe, which was if you go back in time, what's one thing you'd change about your career or your money habits?
Look, nothing really, because it's all learning, but I am super excited that, financial literacy is coming into school, because I think that's something that, I would have benefited from, but I think everyone would. And also, particularly business owners, we see now that, a lot of them just don't have that financial literacy that they need to run a successful business.
Yeah. Are you a goal setter? Do you still set goals?
Yeah, I do. I do set goals. And when I don't have a goal, I sort of flounder around a little bit. And I've run a couple of marathons, and I'm an injured marathon runner, frustrated at the moment. But interestingly, when I was training for the New York Marathon, the best part about it was the goal and the process rather than actually running the marathon itself.
Yeah, that's right. And you've got a lot of, you're out there, you're out there for quite a long time running a marathon, but the training for it when you're running almost as far on a regular basis, it's a lot of time in your head, right?
Absolutely. You can solve the world sometimes on those training runs.
Broken down runner, I can relate.
Yeah.
Is making money important to you, or is it more of a byproduct of success?
I think it's important. It's making enough money so that, there's not the stress of not having money is important. But, and what is success? Like, as I said, I've had the big house. It turns out it wasn't that. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And just finally, this is, if we could make you Prime Minister for the day and maybe give you an outright majority or a magic wand, what would you want to do to try and solve inequality, address economic inequality, and I guess make New Zealand a wealthier, happier place?
Oh, man. That's
question, right?
That's a big question. Yeah, I think having better access to, education and making accessible technology, if we can get New Zealand more productive and lift the standard of living and, then we're going to get better hospitals and schools and so forth. How do you do that? I don't have the answers to that, but what I do know is that there are lots of people out there that we should all be working together and trying to solve it together.
Sure, yeah. You mentioned financial literacy. That's obviously a big thing. And
it is.
Probably, in a way, even for some small business people coming to you, you're kind of working on that with them, I guess.
We definitely are, and we're saying, you can have the best business idea in the world, but if you don't have money, you're not going to get anywhere with it, or access to money. And I think that's something that, we need to somehow crack, is how can we help people find ways to access capital that might not just be through debt, Are there other things we could be doing as a country?
Yeah, we talked a bit about optimism earlier. Just as a final message, people are pretty gloomy about the economy, and there are some very nervous business people or tired business people out there. What do you think your message would be in terms of optimism for New Zealand's outlook?
Oh, I think we've got so much to be positive about, and I think it's really easy when times are tough to hunker down and, get stuck working in your business, but you need to somehow lift your head and work on it, reach out for support. I think it's just like you say to your kids, you become who you hang around. Yeah. And I think there are so many great businesses out there, organisations like the Icehouse, but there are heaps of supportive groups out there where business owners can go and be surrounded with other positive people too. And then it'll just become contagious.
Feeds itself.
Yeah.
That is brilliant. Thanks, Olivia. Thanks for being on Money Talks.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Money Talks. If you want to get in touch, drop me a line at liam.dann@nzherald.co.nz, and you can read more from me at nzherald.co.nz. Thanks to my producer, Ethan Sills, and sound engineer, Adam Pamana. Follow Money Talks on iHeartRadio or wherever you get your podcasts, with new episodes available every Thursday. And if you are new to the podcast, you can check out our back catalogue with over 60 guests from across our seasons.